Hi, I'm Ryan Malone, Music Director at Herbert W. Armstrong College and Imperial Academy, based here in Edmond, Oklahoma at the Philadelphia Church of God World Headquarters. A few years after our college began, in 2004 to be exact, I held an all-day conducting symposium, mainly for some of our college students to learn some of the basics of conducting. The emphasis was on choral conducting, since there was a need for more musical leadership in the choruses of the Philadelphia Church of God. The symposium was based on one I had attended a few years prior at a local university nearby our headquarters here, and at the one I attended, my conducting teacher from college, Dr. David Rail, was there, and for years he has been a highly respected choral conductor and educator. What was great about this symposium I went to was that it condensed most of what Dr. Rail had taught me throughout my 4 years at the University of Missouri-Columbia into one day. So I thought it would be beneficial to pass that condensation of instruction on to these promising young voice students here at our college. We also filmed that symposium in case others would benefit from watching it. Reviewing those recently, I believe there would still be benefit from someone watching those, but it was more of a fly-on-the-wall perspective. I interacted with the students there. I had them try things, gave them immediate feedback. So in terms of someone watching it who wasn't there, I believe there's a more efficient way. And given the technology at our disposal today and the ease by which videos are shared, I figured we could remake this symposium in this format here with me talking directly to you, the one watching it, and that can make for a clearer and more concise video. I hope you will benefit from these lessons. The principles contained in the symposium were originally intended to help choral conductors. I'm going to try to broaden this discussion a little bit beyond that. Still, there will be some things that pertain specifically to vocal ensembles, which I believe is still important to talk about given the needs of the Philadelphia Church of God still today. But these principles could help train a variety of young musicians to conduct a variety of ensembles, particularly when it comes to the principles of manual conducting, score study, and rehearsal strategy. Improving at this will help your confidence as a musical leader. I've said that ensembles can be like dogs in the sense that they can sense fear. It's a principle of leadership that an unconfident leader can cause those being led to be unsure about what they're doing, or it can cause others in the ensemble to challenge the leadership. In a musical ensemble, both these things are detrimental to the music. This instruction should give you the necessary confidence to lead your ensemble and serve the music. This will far exceed what we would call song leading instruction, which focuses on how to lead a congregation through a strophic hymn. Though a song leader will have to use some of the same principles to start and stop a congregation that a conductor would use to start and stop an ensemble, the song leader is using both arms to keep the beat, whereas a conductor is essentially using one arm to establish and keep the beat, and another arm to communicate a series of instructions that will occur throughout the music-making process, whether in rehearsal or in performance. This brings us to our first question: is the conducting gesture important? If so, how or why is it important? What are the results of good gestures? What are the results of bad gestures? Well, the conducting gesture is important, of course, in terms of establishing tempo, keeping the ensemble together, communicating those most basic and essential of instructions. But even the nuances of those gestures are extremely important in terms of the leadership it offers and the confidence it inspires in the group. In its most basic sense, gestures are there to communicate. Good gestures, or what we should call clear gestures, do this most effectively. In a rehearsal, good gestures will help with efficiency, as we will see. It can take the place of stopping and explaining something. Bad gestures can hinder that. In fact, good gestures can mean we have to talk less. As my conductor said, show me more than you tell me. Now, when we do talk, good gestures reinforce our verbal instructions, but bad gestures can contradict those. Good gestures can encourage proper technique. For example, good vocal technique in a choral situation. Bad gestures can encourage tension in the singers or players. That is, rigid gestures or a tight hand can create tension in those you're leading. One conducting teacher told me that we must look like the music sounds. That's a principle that will keep coming up. There are subtle implications based on what we do that we may not realize, that our ensembles may not realize, but they are having a subconscious effect, I believe. Consider that importance as we go through this. The first thing I learned in my choral conducting class had to do with the height of my music stand. The best thing you can do is make yourself visible and open to the ensemble. They must be able to see you. And since our arms are typically in an L shape, which we'll talk about, a lot of what we're doing is happening at the sternum and stomach level. Our music stands, therefore, must be waist level and flat. If it's higher or angled to where it blocks some of your torso, the ensemble could be missing a lot of the visual cues you might be giving them. So I'll put this down here. Your right hand will show the beat pattern. Your left hand will generally be used for cueing, expressions, cutoffs, or what we like to call releases. I strongly recommend keeping the wrist and the arm linked together for clarity of the gesture. We'll see how if the wrist is moving in addition to the hand, it obscures key elements of your gesture. Where is the beat happening? Is it happening here or here? This also brings up the baton question. Now, I have a black stick, which is not the color of most batons, but I'm doing that because of the white background we have here. Batons are generally to extend your arm and make the points of your gestures more visible to larger ensembles or maybe ensembles that you might be conducting in dimly lit orchestra pits. And I'll just say this, if your hand and wrist and arm are appropriately linked, then your baton will work great for you. If your hand and wrist move independently of your arm, then the baton will only emphasize the lack of clarity in your motion. Say my arm goes down and my hand goes down farther, then you will subconsciously wonder where my beat was. Was it where my arm hit the plane, or was it where my hand went down, or was it at the point, at the bottom of my baton, which is even lower? So there's a function to the baton, and oftentimes it can make us less functional. Your general posture throughout should be one that is conducive to good singing, even if you're not a choral conductor. Here's why. You standing up straight invites the ensemble to send the music to you, and you receive the sound. One conductor said, don't cross that line between the conductor and the musicians. Don't make the music for them. Show them how to make it, enable them to do it. So those are some of the basics about your space. The height of the music stand, the separation of the hands, and your posture. Okay, so one of the first things we need to know how to do is how do we start the sound? There are three components as relates to this. The first component we call the set, meaning the conductor must be set. Before we can cue them on anything, our hand has to be still. Before we put anything in motion, there has to be no motion. If things are moving before we prep, this can cloud or confuse where in the gesture they are to start making sound. The set not only keeps things still before you come in, it sends a subconscious signal that you are in charge and you are there for your ensemble. After we set, we move. This is called the preparation, or sometimes the preparatory beat. This is the second component to starting the sound. The preparation is one beat, the previous beat to the one where the sound should start. So if a musical moment starts on a downbeat, the conductor goes up first. Ta. What does that beat indicate? Fundamentally, I am showing tempo, but also the size of the prep beat or the body language surrounding it is also communicating dynamics or the volume of the music about to be made and the character of the phrase I am cueing, or the mood or the atmosphere. Now, if you only remember one thing from these tutorials, remember this. Conducting is a series of preparations. The conductor is constantly in a state or series of motions that is one step ahead of the ensemble, which is a general law of leadership, in fact, being ahead of those we lead and preparing them for what's next. Whether it's starting the sound, cueing another section in the middle of a piece, or stopping the sound, you are always giving these indications one beat before they happen. And in that prep beat, showing tempo, dynamic, and character, you are setting up expectation in the ensemble. This one little move is setting up exactly how they will sing or play. If I do it like this, or like this, that is setting up an expectation from them. And that expectation is set up largely by the speed of my hand through the space, as we will talk about. The third component to starting the sound is the plane. Where I have set my hand before moving is the horizontal plane to where my hand must return. This plane generally works best where the biceps and the forearm create an L, and the hand rests at the end of that L. So the plane is forearm level, which is why the stand is how I mentioned earlier. When the hand comes back to the plane, that's when the ensemble makes sound. It must come back to that plane to be clear. That's where the plane is. The hand must also have a slight bounce or rebound or change of direction to indicate that this is in fact where you put the plane. One conducting teacher said it was like holding a ball and then throwing it down. This point at which the hand rebounds or changes direction is called the ictus, which literally means point. Ensembles aren't consciously thinking of that term, but they know where you've put the ictus because of where your hand bounces or moves in a different direction. These are three components of starting the sound that must be known first: the set, the preparation, and the plane. And we've demonstrated starting the sound on a downbeat to illustrate these points. We will talk about how to start the sound on different beats of the bar in a future lesson. Each one of these three components, the last two especially, contains some common problems. We already mentioned the common problem for the first component, that is a lack of set or a lack of motionlessness before the preparation gesture. When it comes to the preparation, here are a few common issues or common problems. Not breathing. It's particularly important when conducting choirs and instruments that require air, and even non-breathing instruments, that you breathe with them. In the case of choirs, it shows that you are willing to do exactly what you expect of them, a great principle of leadership. The best way to demonstrate the effectiveness is to show you footage from that seminar in 2004 where I had a group of men there to sing based on the way I was conducting.
Great, that was good. Now sing it. Yeah, which one felt better? The first one, yeah, I mean, obviously.
So if you only remember two things from this, first is conducting is a series of preparations. Second is please breathe on your preparations. I've worked with children's choir directors before who are so concerned about conducting the right beat pattern on a unison song, and I sometimes say, put your hands down, look at them, breathe with them before it's time to sing, and mouth the words as you go. Now, we can't do that in a larger multi-part choir, for one, because the motion of the head as we sing might encourage bad vocal technique, but the principle remains. Look at them and breathe just before they have to make music, and so much will work correctly. Another common problem in the prep beat is the conductor looking down. Even trained musicians, knowing when to come in and that you have cued them, will likely do so with less confidence because they lost your visual attention.
Let's sing ta for me. Ta. Okay, now let's do it again. Yeah, that's not as encouraging, is it? To have someone look down while they're kind of in the middle of, prepping you. It's like
usually when we don't look at them, it's because we're looking at our score. One conductor told me, have the score in your head and your head out of the score. A third common problem in the prep beat is unclear speed. If my prep beat comes up quicker than my downbeat comes down, I have poorly set up expectations. If my prep beat goes up slower than my downbeat comes down, it's another case of failing to set up and meet their expectations.
Let's sing ta. Yeah, now try it again. Yeah, see, because if I go up quickly and then I go down slowly, it's like, what's going on? Or if I go up slowly and I go down quickly, I've completely eliminated. Make sure you know in your mind the tempo of the piece, how you want them to sound when they start. Ta, and then just make it equal going up and going down, and the same distance both ways, and it'll be completely clear. Now,
another problem with the preparation can be extra clicks or beats. Clicking the hand when going up might telegraph to a musician an extra beat. This is incredibly important when conducting instrumentalists. Choir members can usually see what other sections of the choir are doing. The basses know, for instance, while they don't sing what is happening. An orchestral member, on the other hand, only has his or her own part to look at, and if a conductor shows an extra click at the beginning, the instrumentalist, if they're resting, might start counting on the prep beat and based on what the conductor just showed. So if the sound starts on beat 1 in a 4-beat pattern, count back to the beat just before it, or sometimes we say 1, 2, 3, and then we start after the ictus of 4. So during the or part, after the part. So we don't click or hit 4 in our preparation. We show what's after the in 4. 1, 2, 3, or 1. Your ensemble sees up and down from you and side to side. They don't see depth as easily. So if you're prepping back and landing forward, they may not know where you intend them to start making sound. It's best when starting the sound to prep with the right hand, the beat hand. Having the other hand move confuses perhaps the speed of the prep or where the plane is. And this leads us into common issues concerning the plane. The more you keep your hands' duties separate, the more efficient and clear your conducting will be. When it comes to the plane, here are a few common problems. Stopping short of the plane, or going through the plane. The best way to demonstrate the effectiveness of this is to show you footage from that seminar in 2004.
Ta, everyone sing ta for me. Ta. Okay, now sing it. Yeah, wasn't it? Now watch again. Sing ta. Right. I went first. I stopped before the plane, and the second I went through the plane. There's just something really. That's the thing, is bad gestures can just get in the way of a good rehearsal if you're constantly not being clear with where do you want me to start, or ta, like where are we going? So there's this plane here, and you always have to be aware of this plane. It's like I said, it's usually your elbows bent, and it's right around where your arm just kind of sticks out. With everything kind of relaxed, that's your plane, and just keep everything going on the plane there. The entire beat pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, everything just is kind of happening at this plane. Okay?
Here's another demonstration from my 2004 seminar.
Ta, here we go. Now sing ta. Yeah, was that as comfortable when I just kind of stopped? No, yeah, it didn't sound as together. Try it again. I'll try to do it right this time. Yeah, that was better. Now try it this way. Yeah, and even the thing is, you kind of start on time, but you don't activate. You don't keep singing like you subconsciously. You just want to stop singing because I stopped. So there has to be a rebound on that plane. So if I go ta, you're going to see my hand move when I hit that plane, and that basically tells you where the plane is. See that when my hand changes direction, then you're like, oh yeah, I'm right to sing there because that's where That's where the point is. Now,
when the hand arrives back at the plane, if the wrist or any finger for that matter moves extra, it throws off our perception of where the plane or the ictus is. So those are some common problems with starting the sound. In this particular lesson, I want to include the basic principles of stopping the sound because they are based on the same principles as starting the sound, except we teach stopping the sound most often with the left hand. Still yet, there are the same three components. The set, be still before you cue the release, that is the left hand being still. That means get the left hand into the equation while the sound is sustaining. Do this subtly. So if we're holding the word cat, cat, I bring the left hand up subtly. The preparation, show a full beat before the release, making sure the speed of the prep beat is the same as the release beat. Cat. The plane, start and return to the same place and rebound on that plane. Cat. A little rebound there. And these would all require the same cautions about the common problems that they could have that we talked about, the same problems with the starting of the sound. Now you might have noticed that I called stopping the sound a release rather than a cutoff. Just as the conducting gestures will communicate certain things to those making the music, so is the way we talk about or label the things we are asking of them. Our language can give a tense vocal image if the release gesture is tense. Plus, if we call it a cutoff, a vocal ensemble especially is likely to add some sort of tension or grab when they cut off, when they stop the sound. The same would even be true of instruments that use air to produce the sound. Even an instrumentalist on a bowed string could add improper tension at the release of a sound if we're encouraging it either in our gestures or in our language when we say cut off. For example, to release, a singer need only stop the phonation rather than cut off the air with overly engaging the epiglottis. Here's a little demonstration from that 2004 conducting symposium here on our campus.
sing cat. Cat. Here we go. Cat. Yes. Okay, so what we do is we start the sound, we get our left hand up there, we set it, and then we do the same thing where we're like, we even breathe. It's not like we would expect them to breathe, but it's like cut off. So we know I'm about to cut you off, or I'm about to release you.
Just as with starting the sound, this method of releasing sets up and fulfills expectation in the ensemble. Also in the spirit of releasing the sound rather than cutting it off, I believe the left hand must not close at the release point. First of all, this adds another visual element to the release that could be confusing. You might wonder, where's the release? Is it where my hand comes back to the plane, or is it where I close my hand? Especially if I don't do them at exactly the same time. Second of all, this closing of the hand can encourage certain tension in the way the ensemble stops the sound. Equally confusing is turning the hand as it closes and as it returns to the plane. Again, we subconsciously ask, where is the release point? At the plane, at the turnover of the hand, at the closing of the fingers, at some other unclear wrist motion? Simply start at the plane and rebound where you return with a relaxed hand that moves exactly with your arm. If you have to do something at the release point, I suppose you could have your hand closed and then open at the release, which I do sometimes. This counteracts the initial tendency to close the sound when cutting off. Again, it's the principle of them seeing a change of direction or rebound at the plane so the ensemble knows where it is. All these manual components of conducting take practice, just as anything involving muscle memory takes practice. Whether it's practicing an instrument or drilling some athletic activity, conducting is no different, as your score will require multiple things of the conductor at once. or even in close proximity. You should practice these things ahead of being with your ensemble. So today we've talked about the importance of our gestures, making them visible and clear, particularly in how to start and stop the sound. We use the downbeat as an example of how to do this, but not all sound starts on downbeats. So next time we will talk about how to start the sound on various beats and half beats, which requires us to know what the beat is in our conducting. What is the beat? We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about cueing different components of the composition along the way while the sound continues, including those pesky fermatas. I hope you will join me then.